All right, folks. Everybody ready? Welcome to ThinkAgain. Appreciate those who have been able to be here in the same space. We're a little meager tonight. I had a number of friends reach out and say, delay, they got this, they got that. So we don't have as many people as I hoped. We've got a few online, and then this will be recorded, so you can watch it later on. So again,
You did hit record, right?
I did, thank you. Appreciate that. Last month's with Peggy Fletcher Stack is not recorded because she didn't want to record it. Then I forgot to record it, but then I found out when I asked her, she didn't want it, she wasn't gonna let it be out there anyway. So that was really an interesting one. And then the others are recorded, so you can always go back and see those still. And I want to thank Ed and Kristen so much for their sharing their home in this wonderful space, and Madison over here, Daniels, for monitoring the Zoom end of things. And we appreciate those from near and far who were on our Zoom. So thank you. And we're lucky to have Lynn Curtis here. He's in between his trips out of country with his humanitarian work. So we've made it 3 times now. That's awesome. And we got Jed. Jed is the son of Kristen. And grateful to have him here. He's got a lot of experience in the environmental realm. And when was this last book published?
Oh, it's been years.
But now you're working at University of Press instead of Utah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks to my wife for being here and helping. Support. Appreciate that. All right. I'm going to turn the time over to Anna. As you know, the bio is online, and we've hopefully taken the time to read that and the other things that are posted on it. So I'm going to turn the time over to you, Anna, and start out just telling us a little bit how you got into this stuff. And then we'll do some dialogue and questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jay, for inviting me, and thank you all for having me. What an interesting group to come together and talk about important issues. And I'm thrilled that you're talking about climate, because the most important thing, I think you shared one of the Catherine Hayhoe pieces, and the most important thing we can all do for our climate is to talk about it and just have an open dialogue about how we create a better future. So my background, I've been in the media industry for a very long time. I was, at ABC News for 10 years. I was Diane Sawyer's producer for many years and traveled all over the world with her. I covered the war in Iraq and Hurricane Katrina and 9/11 and, the tsunami in Thailand, and kind of just traveled all over the world with her, and then was at Good Morning America for 5 years doing political coverage, all kinds of different things as a senior producer. In fact, my company is going to be on Good Morning America tomorrow at 8 a.m. So you'll have to watch. It's a big moment for us. So it's full circle for me, because it's like back to my roots. But anyway, I was in the news space for a long time. After that, worked at Yahoo for 6 years. Kind of got my digital MBA, as I call it. Learned the digital space and did digital video. And then, had 2 kids, left, came back to Disney. And my last job at Disney was working with the ABC owned television stations, which are the 8 biggest local television stations across the country. And my role was really focused on local news innovation and how do we make sure that the next generation cares about local news and that local news stays vibrant, because it's really pretty critical to democracy and all of that. So long story, part of the reason, one of the things I spent time on at ABC was weather, because weather is the #1 topic for local news consumers. It's really what matters most, right, to all of us, especially here in Utah with all the snow. But I felt like we weren't doing a good enough job kind of connecting the dots between what was happening with extreme weather across the country and what was happening in our climate. So I did a lot of work there to bring together folks from ABC News, National Geographic, which is owned by Disney, and our local meteorologists, who are really trusted figures in their community, to try to connect the dots a bit more. At the same time, I was living in the Los Angeles area, had 2 small kids, evacuated from the wildfires at 3 a.m, had friends who lost their homes to wildfires, couldn't send my kids to school because the air quality was too poor to send them to school. So the light bulbs were kind of going off for me as I was, covering this story as well and trying to figure out why my friends and family and people around me, everybody seemed concerned, but nobody was really engaged in this topic. And so, I guess this group will understand this. I really kind of felt a spiritual calling to use my time and talents as a storyteller and a communicator to try to address this issue, because we talk a lot about climate solutions and climate tech and all of these different things, and they're so important. But if people don't know about them, anytime we've had to do something hard in human history, we really needed the public to understand and be engaged in the solution. And so I started just kind of getting curious and joining some climate communities. There's a ton of great climate communities out there. I met a lot of people, sort of asked why is there no place to go for climate content that's not sort of very eco or very liberal, or, felt like in general, the climate space is dominated by people really talking to each other who are already sort of on the bandwagon. A lot of climate coverage is, pretty text heavy, pretty boring. There's a lot of newsletters out there, but it's pretty dense to kind of get through it. There's really no place that was doing sort of mainstream climate content. And so I met a fellow who's now my co-founder at the Cool Down, Dave Finocchio. He started Bleacher Report. I don't know if anybody's sports fans, but it was a really successful sports site where they kind of came into the sports space and disrupted it with, sort of really engaging, fun content that was a little more contemporary. So he kind of had the same realization, and really the vision that we had was to, to create a, communication platform where we could communicate with mainstream America about this topic. And so I decided to, kind of take a chance and leave Disney and take a huge pay cut to do a startup. We raised a seed round of funding from, some investors, really interesting group of investors. And we launched last July with a website. We've got an Instagram newsletter, 2 newsletters. And really our goal is to be the first mainstream climate brand and to make climate topics more accessible, a little bit more hopeful in a lot of ways, because one of the things that we both realized when we started investigating the space is that there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening. And I think a lot of us are just not hearing about it. The news is dominated by the doom and gloom and by the overwhelm of sort of what's happening. But I think, so I think a lot of people tune out because they just don't think there's anything that they can do about it or that can be done about it. And it's just not true. I mean, for anybody who's heard Catherine Hayhoe speak or experts in the space, we do need to move fast, but there are a lot of things that we can do to make a big difference. And so we wanted to kind of get that message out there. We don't sugarcoat the truth or the news or anything like that, but when there is, difficult stories, when there are difficult stories to tell, we explain them in plain English. So we have, our own style guide that we've created using sort of all of the expertise in the space and people who've studied the space, to really, not use complicated language that sort of people can't understand. Attention spans are low. We explain things simply and we focus on a ton of the innovation that's happening. And then we also are trying to be a guide for people to make it easier for people to make better choices that might be, better for your health, that might be less wasteful. Now, there are a lot of sustainable products and services that are, just as good, if not better than conventional products. And I think we think about several years ago when people tried sort of sustainable or green products, some of them just didn't work that well, or there was a green premium. We still see that a little bit, but now we see, we see much better products. And then, we also wanted to sort of open and broaden the conversation to more people than just an eco-liberal crowd that was kind of dominating the conversation. So we really make an active effort to feature, unexpected messengers for climate, like people who aren't talking about this every day, or who maybe aren't the typical people that you go to, and make sure that conservatives are represented in this conversation too, because if you look at the data, liberals have gotten more engaged in climate over the past several years. They really can't be more engaged than they already are. But, when it comes to conservatives, it's kind of flatlined. There hasn't been a huge growth in the climate movement among conservatives. And I think you're starting to see that happen. I mean, even here in Utah, you're starting to see that. In fact, tomorrow I'm going and spending time with John Curtis, Representative Curtis, because he's been a leader on this. He started the Conservative Climate Caucus, which is one of the largest caucuses in the House. I think a third of House Republicans are part of the Climate Caucus, and that Climate Caucus accepts that humans are to blame for climate change, and looks for solutions to do something about it. So I've been talking with him about. He's going to give me a house tour because he renovated or built his house with climate in sort of like a climate friendly way. So we're going to do that and feature it on the cool down. So we do try to represent a lot of different perspectives, and just like a sports site, right? Like not everybody's going to support the same team, but we want to create an environment in which everybody can have a voice and can bring their solutions to the table. We don't all have to agree. So that's kind of my career story. I moved to Utah about 3 years ago during the pandemic. I was living in Los Angeles for 10 years, and I was in New York 10 years before that. And because I've been, sort of a media executive, didn't think I would ever really be able to go anywhere else. My parents had a house here in Solitude that was like a vacation home that they rented out. And so during the pandemic, we brought our kids and stayed there for about 6 weeks and decided that we really loved it here and wanted to be closer to, the outdoors and hike and bike and all the things. And so my parents moved full time to Solitude, so they live up here, and we live in Park City. My brother lives in Cottonwood Heights, so kind of the whole family has moved out here, and we were happy to kind of get out here and get our kids in school. In LA, they were not in school. And so I've gotten really involved also, in the Park City community in terms of, just doing what I can with the touch points that I have in my life, which I think is sort of all of our responsibilities, whether so at the school, I helped to start a compost program for the elementary school. So our 500 kids are composting their lunches, which is terrific because we're reducing food waste. And then we're also teaching kids, right, about a lot of people don't understand that when you put food in the trash can, it gets trapped in a plastic bag and it turns into methane, which is one of the most dangerous gases. So it's really a pretty impactful thing to compost or just to reduce your food waste. So things like that, very involved with a lot of the efforts in Park City to make a difference. So I just kind of try to, live my life that way and do the best I can. Nobody's perfect, but that's kind of my personal story. So I'm, in terms of the cool down, we are growing very quickly. I think, a lot even faster than we anticipated. We're reaching over 10 million unique users a month on our website, which is really remarkable for a climate site. I don't think anybody else has been able to do that. So our goal really is to drive scale, right? And to show that climate can engage a wide audience. We want to be the go-to place where people, come to, engage with these topics and understand what's happening, and then also have ways to take an action, right, in your life. So that's kind of our goal for our first year is really build that big audience, connect people on, help people start their journey on this topic, and then kind of go to different places to go deeper. And we're collecting a huge amount of data about what people are interested in on this topic, in terms of what motivates people to engage with something or to click through to something, which is really helpful because we can understand, as much as we think people want to help the planet, they may, but it has to be good for their wallet, it has to be good for their families, it has to align with their values. And so while a lot of climate communications is focused on do this because it saves the planet, we really focus on do this because it's, it'll save you money, or because it has non-toxic ingredients, or because it's better for your health. So we're learning a lot of lessons and trying to share that with the industry. We're sharing that with, sports leagues and, politicians like, Representative Curtis and others. And hopefully that will also be, a service to our community. So I'll stop blabbing on, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'd love for this to be interactive if there's anything that you would like to talk about, or questions you have for me about my past or what we're building.
You have specific products like videos or brochures or messages, or
We're focused right now on our website. So we produce about 10 to 15 articles a day. that we distribute across, a wide variety of platforms. So we're on Apple News and MSN and Smart News and Motherly and all different kinds of places. We have an Instagram channel, so we don't do a lot of original video right now because it's pretty expensive to do original video, although tomorrow with Representative Curtis, like we're doing that as a video and an article with some, photography and things like that. But right now we're not doing a lot of original video. So we kind of, the first step is really to curate the climate space because there's so much great stuff out there. And there's a lot of young people, whether they're on Instagram or Reddit or TikTok, who are doing great content. And so we surface that content and then share it kind of broadly with our communities.
How many employees do you have?
We have about 8 full-time employees, so we're pretty small. And then we have a lot of, freelance writers that work with us and, people outside of our full-time group.
I've enjoyed the website. I think you send me an update via email. Anybody can sign up, obviously.
Yeah.
Get notified of things, but it's kind of fun to see the variety of things that you highlight. On
Yeah,
the
we have
website,
2
from
newsletters.
tech
Yep.
to practical things like maybe different laundry type dryer sheet things or balls, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
Yeah,
my sister was interested in those.
in the dryer balls. Yeah,
Yeah.
we love dryer balls.
What is, I'd say my question is, what are some of the areas where you found success getting more conservative people interested in environmental issues? What are some of the approaches you've used?
Yeah, I think it goes, I think we have limited data to see like whether people are conservative or liberal who are clicking on our content. So I don't want to pretend that we know exactly what engages conservatives versus liberals. But we must be engaging conservatives because we've got a pretty broad base and we do get good responses from, like Representative Curtis, I don't think would be doing an interview with us if he didn't think that our content resonated. So I think it gets down to, Catherine Hago is the best communicator on this stuff. And it's really about, we all want clean air, clean water, and, a better future for our families. I think using language that isn't, incendiary, but that really gets to like what we all value. She does a great exercise where she, asks everybody to envision the future and what does that look like? And it, typically, invariably is about like, if you think about it right now, like, what do you want for the future, right? You want, not to have air pollution, right? In Salt Lake, you want to save the Great Salt Lake, right? You want to, have economic prosperity for, want people to have jobs. These are kind of basic things. And so when we start with what we have in common versus what's dividing us, I think that works a lot. All of the stuff on innovation, we work with Benji Backer, who's a conservative environmentalist who is actually doing a conference here in June. And so we featured he did a tour of a nuclear plant, which I think, doesn't get covered a lot by some of the hardcore environmentalists, but, that's been a topic there's a lot of interest in. Certainly anything around sort of technology, American innovation, a lot of those topics are really interesting. And here in Utah, we're in the middle of like a huge transformation. Our whole world is in the middle of an enormous transformation. I think, Al Gore has called it like, the speed, it's going to happen with the speed of the digital revolution and the scale of the industrial revolution. Literally everything is transforming and we're shifting right now from a coal-based economy to, a lot of different energy sources that are going to, transition over the next several years. So you see somebody like Representative Curtis representing a lot of different constituencies, right? From coal county, carbon county to, to renewables. So I think that kind of transition and that kind of technology is exciting to everybody.
what in your style guide you talked about, what are in our everyday languages, we try to maybe be more inclusive of more conservatives and try to speak in a way that doesn't push them away and invite in a way that invites them to have conversations about this. What are maybe some words that would be best not to use? and maybe things that honestly helpful if we're trying to kind of reach across the aisle, and, get talk more in ways that don't use the liberal word trigger conservative.
Yeah.
To,
Well,
to-
it's funny
to
because,
not
yeah, I
wanna
mean,
talk.
even the fact that the Conservative Climate Caucus is called the Conservative Climate Caucus was an enormous debate among, Curtis and his team who created that, because at that point, when it was created, that word was very incendiary. But, I think ultimately they felt like we can't sugarcoat it. It is the climate. And the climate should not be political. That word should not be political. It's crazy. But I think, a lot of it for us is just that there's a lot of jargon, and some of it intentionally was created as complicated language to keep people distanced from these topics. Just as like, your carbon footprint was actually created by the oil industry to like make it, put responsibility back on the individual instead of on, the actual problem at hand. So we don't really use things like carbon emissions and things like that. Like, I don't think people understand what emissions are. I think a lot of people don't understand what global warming is. So if you can explain things in simple terms, that pollution, how pollution is happening, that heat pollution is going up into the air, it's getting trapped. It's like a blanket going over, over us, and basically trapping these gases, in our environment. So we just try to explain things, like anything that we write that is a word that we wouldn't normally use. We pretty much have a translation for that, so that it's not overly complicated and people can connect with actually, what's going on. And I think on the positive side, mentioning things like clean air, clean water, things that everybody can agree on. We also have sort of a solutions guide that our writers and editors use alongside every story. So anytime we're writing about a bad news story, we also try to embed, some language or some links to some of the solutions that are happening in that space. If it's about extreme heat, if it's about flooding, if it's whatever it might be, so that we make sure we're really intentional about connecting also a solution, and not just sort of leaving people with a feeling of there's nothing that can be done.
That's great.
He and I are and maybe others have been involved in humanitarian efforts, and someone in that field once told me, well, a lot of the work that's being done is like sprinkling pixie dust and not really getting at the root cause and making big changes. From all and as my question has nothing to do with humanitarian work, but it has to do with this notion of just doing these little things that kind of are a show, but not really substantial. If there was an article 20 years ago in Mechanical Engineering magazine that said, "Save the world and buy a Hummer." Okay, and it basically showed that a Hummer had a lower carbon footprint than a Prius, and that really, if you're worried about carbon footprint, you'd buy the Hummer. Okay, but if you're worried about a show, you'd buy the Prius. Okay, and I don't know if that's true today, but that was an interesting notion. But from everything and studied, what are the things that you would want to communicate will make the biggest differences?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it's probably right. And obviously that's the conversation that always happens. Like, is it really going to make a difference if I, switch out something in my home, or if I make a change or whatever? And I think, I just think that logic is faulty at this point. I mean, we really need all hands on deck, and we do need the big changes to happen. And I think we're starting to see some of those happen, but a lot of those changes too are motivated by consumer behavior and consumers, the public, pressuring politicians, asking, buying products that are cleaner. It's all a ripple effect. So I think there are things in our own lives that we can do that matter more than others. I do think talking about climate is the number one thing we can all do, is making it a priority, talking about it on a regular basis, and having conversations with a lot of different people about it. There are things we can do in our own life, like food waste is an enormous one that, people don't really realize. And I think that could be that has a big impact. Obviously electrifying our homes and trying to transition our homes, those are bigger changes that not everybody can make all at once. But if your furnace breaks, or if something, if you can change something out, if you can buy an electric vehicle as opposed to a gas vehicle, things like that, those are going to be big impact changes. so I totally, everybody, I think when we lose our own sort of responsibility for being part of the solution, that's when we're in trouble. So I do think, it's really critical that we all start to take some actions in our lives. And, it will add up.
So maybe going back to Matt, back to the idea of the language. I'm noticing a shift in various disciplines where instead of just talking to one another, they really, really want to be part of public debate, public conversation. And I'm wondering to what extent, I mean, obviously the scientists are super important in alerting us to the dangers of what's happening to our planet, but to what extent can you amplify the voices of professionals, experts, the scientists out there, and how would you expect folks in these various disciplinary areas actually engaging in public conversation? Because a lot of them some of them do a good job. I think more of them these days want to do more, but there's oftentimes a disconnect, and maybe that's with the public trusting the experts or understanding them, but is that something that you're doing in your field? Is kind of
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because I think that's been the problem with the communication issue. I mean, for some reason, people just don't, I think the vast majority of the public hasn't really listened to climate scientists who've been saying this for forever. And, 97% of climate scientists have agreed that climate change is happening, yet a lot of people, didn't believe that. They didn't know that 97% of climate scientists pretty much agree on what's going on, which is like a critical fact that we just continue to communicate. Because really, like, conservatives understand this, like that's why there's so many people in the conservative climate caucus, why conservatives are engaging in this topic. So yeah, I mean, we are definitely trying to amplify the voice and also translate some of that work. I mean, that's what, we take complicated studies that come out, and try to translate those for mainstream audiences and explain them in plain English. And, I think that's another place where the cool down could potentially be valuable, right? Like just as we're working with businesses and politicians and sports leagues to try to accelerate their efforts, but also help them to leverage our work so that they can communicate more effectively with mainstream America. Like that's another use case for what we do. Like,
is it a platform where they can actually go and they can publish their work in maybe more digestible pieces? I mean, is this something?
I mean, it's not something we're pursuing. I think we're certainly open to it. And now that we're getting so big, we're getting a lot of inbound from, a lot of companies, from climate tech companies who want to reach people, but don't have, customer acquisition costs are really high right now for people to bring people in. So they'll reach out to us and say, hey, we know you're reaching a ton of people. We know you've got distribution, you know how to write headlines. And, sort of, we have that digital media expertise of kind of knowing what's going to engage people. So that could be another avenue. Like, I'm not saying it has been. I mean, Catherine Hayhoe has been a big supporter, and she features a lot of our content in her work. We feature a lot of her content because she's such a clear communicator, and she is one of the best examples of how you can talk about climate as a climate scientist. But there's still so many that are not communicating effectively, and it is hard sometimes to translate all the the dense scientific studies. So we do have some people on our staff who have climate backgrounds and really know how to explain that. And we're trying to tell as many different stories across different disciplines. And even less about like not just about science, but also just like the practical things we all experience in our lives. Like right now, we've been doing a bunch of stories about HOAs, right? Homeowner associations. Because people get really fired up about their homeowner associations. And a lot of people across this country are trying to make changes in their homes and their their homeowners associations, right? Like they want to put, native plants in their yard, but the homeowners associations don't like the way the native plants look, right? Or they want to get solar panels, but they can't do it because they're not allowed or whatever. So this has become like a whole area of, and what the cool thing about what we do is that we can see something like that. We do a couple stories about it and we're like, hey, there's something here. People are really engaged in this and they really want to talk about it. And that, kind of pops up for us, like, is there an opportunity there for us to put together a guide for people to work with their homeowners associations? Should we be going community by community and helping people to understand, you know, what they can and can't do, or the fact that, you know, all of these things, like, that's why this gathering is wonderful, because a lot of these changes are going to happen locally, right? And they're going to happen, you know, we know from the data that when your neighbor gets solar panels, you're more likely to get solar panels. Or if they see you composting, they're going to be like, what are they doing? You know, let me learn about that. And that's how a lot of these changes happen. So we believe that there's definitely a place for us to play in the local space. And you know, by kind of tracking these data points and figuring out like where we can be most valuable to accelerate these changes and kind of create this, like, you know, movement, right? That's what we're trying to do. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Shift to topic.
yeah.
So I see you have products that
Mhm.
you talk about. And by the way, I hope you're pushing dryer racks as well as
Yes,
dryer balls,
for sure.
drying
For sure.
racks. Which is even
Either
better.
better.
So but how do you choose the products?
We have somebody on our team who's, you know, an expert. She tests almost all of the products that we feature. We also curate, there's an incredible amount of certifications, which, you know, are overwhelming, I think, to the average consumer, you know, whether it's like, there are millions of EWG and cradle to cradle and, you know, leaping bunny and all these different certifications. So we kind of curate from all of those places. And, you know, we've kind of come up with our own methodology in terms of what is, you know, what's important to us, because each one of those things values something else. Like sometimes, for example, in the clean beauty space, you'll find products that are clean and non-toxic, but they don't have great packaging, you know, or they're just all in plastic. So we really care about non-toxic, but we also care about reducing plastic waste. So yeah, we've looked at all those products and we, you know, we find the best ones. And you know, our goal eventually is that you'll be able to come to the cool down and, you know, ask us or text us or say, hey, I'm looking for a bar shampoo or whatever. What are your 3 favorites? Or a laundry detergent, you know, that's not in a huge plastic bottle. And then we can say, okay, do you like, you know, liquid detergent or do you like powder detergent? Do you want it to have a scent? Do you not want it to have a scent? And we have so many great options, you know, in that category. So,
Like, would you have a laundry detergent page that says, okay, here's the ones without scent, here's the ones without.
yeah, I
plastic,
mean,
or-
yeah,
I guess
possibly.
they-
I mean, I think it's a question of like, it's always a question of like how to meet you and your needs in the
Yeah.
right moment. So, you know, that might look like, you know, maybe that's sort of like a concierge service, or maybe you have a service where you can say, it's like, I don't want to think about this, but I just want to I want to redo all the stuff I have in my house, or I want to change my cleaning products, or I want to change one thing, or whatever it might be. But yeah, we like, if you searched laundry detergent on our site, you know, you'd find a few options. We try to keep it pretty tight though, because we don't want people to have overwhelm of like, there are so many options.
Thank you.
So we have like our, you know, we have our favorite, you know, and I'm happy to share, like on GMA tomorrow, we're sharing, you know, we gave the family our favorite powder detergent, which comes in a, you know, a can that can be reused or can be recycled. It has all non-toxic ingredients. It's made in the USA in Chicago by a women-owned, you know, B Corp. It works really well on, you know, dirty kids' clothes. So yeah, we have like a couple of our favorites, and my friend and I, she's the one who does the products. We are both moms, you know, who lived around the corner from each other, and we've just always been kind of trading, both of us, like, where do you buy your socks, or where do you do this and you do that? So we're like, why don't we make this available to everybody? So she's pretty diligent about kind of going through all of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of fun for you guys to do that. You know, I had a similar question, is how you vet these people reaching out to you, these companies wanting you to help promote their stuff.
Yeah.
I imagine
Oh,
there's
really?
quite a few you have to
Now there's
say
like,
no to,
yeah.
because you do due diligence and finding out, well, it's not quite
yeah.
meeting our criteria. of what-
Yeah, now there's, you know, there's hundreds of people that are reaching out to us all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, it is, yeah, we have to do the due diligence, and then in some cases, like, not everything is perfect, you know, so
right.
there are some categories where there's been more progress than others. So sometimes we have to say, okay, you know, we're gonna feature this product. It's, you know, we wish it had better whatever, but unfortunately that doesn't quite exist yet, you know, like, we've done a lot of work on induction cooktops, because that's obviously been a hot button issue with all the gas stove studies that have come out. And what was that? Hot buttons, yes. But you know, it's hard to find like it's really hard to find induction cooktops for a certain size range. Like if you want to have a 48-inch range, it's hard to find, a great 48-inch induction cooktop. So we can't really recommend that, or we have to recommend some other ones. Like we recommend just a simple, $80 induction hot plate that, cooktop thing that you can get. And like I have one at my home, even though I have a gas stove. But I cook, things on a day-to-day basis. Like, my kids eat a lot of mac and cheese, and it boils my water twice as fast as my gas stove. And it's not putting, there's no pollution coming out of it. It's easy to clean up. It's not hot to touch. And so I have that in my house. And like pretty much everybody at the pool has one of these things because it's just inexpensive and it's easy. So like we recommended that, but not everything is perfect. So it takes some, enabling to find the right products.
Do you note the caveats that you have as the cool down?
Yeah.
You recommend some, we wish it. This.
Yeah, and we have two newsletters. One of them is kind of like as you mentioned, it's a general newsletter. It's called Here on Earth, and we feature like one text story, and like literally it's like 2 sentences about every story. It's very, very short, but it's meant to kind of give you a quick overview and help you get smart really quickly about what's happening. So it's like a text story. There's usually some kind of hack. We've got, an action item. We have, just different things you can do or engage with. And then we have one newsletter that comes out every Friday. That's a product specific newsletter. And in that case, it's first person written by Nina, who's my friend who has tested everything. And a lot of times she will say like, I really like this brand, but it's not quite, this is what, it's not perfect, right? It still comes in a plastic bag or something, or it still has too much wrapping or whatever. But we kind of do what we, make those caveats now.
That makes sense. Couple questions online.
Yeah.
These come from Mitch and Tiff. How do you fund this without biased parties trying to influence the narrative?
Well, we're funded, as I mentioned, we raised a seed round of funding. Our lead investor is a venture capital, investor out of LA who invests in a lot of climate and media companies. We don't really have, we have a bunch of really interesting investors. We have like, the former head of Credo Beauty, and we have Bill Simmons in the sports space, and a couple of people in the climate tech space. We really have zero influence from our investors on our content. The only, we have a very hands-off investment group. They're all very supportive of what we're doing, but really they don't even really care if we're making money this year. Their goal, these are impact-led investors who really want us to help the climate movement. Their goal is for us to, to help us, get to the scale that we're getting to. We obviously have to make money at some point. So we are going to do another fundraise later this year, early next year. And we're, working on our revenue models, and we're definitely going to be making money. We are a for-profit business, and we did that specifically because it's different to, have a for-profit business versus a non-for-profit. So, but we really have no influence. I mean, the biggest challenge we have with regard to influencing our content is the more sneaky ways that content is influenced these days, with misinformation, with the, I would say, both sides, but also like we've seen instances where, and I have no disrespect for people in the oil and gas industry. So if anybody has a connection to an oil and gas industry, like we do need to get off of oil and gas, but the people who work in the oil and gas industry are good people who are, heating our homes and doing all these great things. But there is a segment of the oil and gas industry that infiltrates organizations like ours, and they will go into our comments on Instagram, and we can tell, that is the oil and gas industry that will just kind of jump and start, making comments that are very obvious that that's the case. So that we have to be aware of, and we can't, we have to, like anybody who's in the news industry right now and in the media has to be very cognizant and very alert to misinformation, disinformation, artificial intelligence, anything that's generated that may not be accurate, because you can put together a story, you can put together an image, and it can be completely fabricated.
So is your business model going to be ads then?
No, it'll be a diversified business model. So ads will be a piece of it, but it's not going to be an advertising based business, partly because my co-founder and I really felt we didn't want advertising to influence our content, which is the question. So, we didn't want to spend our first year trying to please, advertising partners or promote brands that we didn't feel good about. We do make some money from our distribution deals from advertising, but it's not like a branded content type of situation where somebody is like paying us to feature their brand. We don't do that. So it will be some of that. We are, as I mentioned, we're building this data backend where we're tracking all the data that we produce. We think there's going to be a compelling B2B offering there, where we can offer that as a service to companies, to anybody who wants to, where we can help companies to better reach customers in ways that are more effective. We might have like a newsletter that they want to read because we have like all of the information on that topic. We might, those kinds of things. So that'll be a piece of it. I think there'll be an e-commerce piece of it. That's pretty small for us right now, because if somebody does buy a product on our site, we get an affiliate, fee from that. But it's so small right now that it doesn't really add up to anything. There may be a subscription model in the future where somebody would, hire us or pay us to, as I sort of said, to help them to, make a transition in their life. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity.
And is the target to go public then eventually, or?
I don't know. We haven't really, I think in 3 years we'll be doing well. Whether we become like acquired by somebody, whether we go public, I think we'll have to just see what's the best outcome for the business, and also like how can we make the biggest impact. Right now we're just very, sort of focused on that.
Another one. How do we engage youth in a youth-centric way and be authentic at the same time?
Yeah, I think that young people are more passionate than anybody else about this topic. They're also more anxious and more depressed about this topic than anybody else, I think, is what we've seen from the data. Because of our distribution platforms, we're not like, I would say Gen Z and younger are not our first demo to reach, just because we're reaching a little bit of an older demo. And interestingly, we've seen a ton of engagement from grandparents and from older folks, as well as that 25 to 44-year-old range, because I think a lot of people realize what's going on. They want a better future for their grandchildren, and they want to be part of the solution. And that's another huge movement. But with regard to the young generation, there's a lot happening on the platforms where young people are spending their time. So there's incredible influencers that are on TikTok that are doing really great work to kind of speak to young people in their language. And that's typically what we do, is we make sure that we're talking in line. We're tapping into things that are in the zeitgeist at all levels. Yeah.
I have a comment and a question that'll lend to your question. I'm a public school teacher, middle school, 7th and 8th graders, science department. On topic, once in a while, we as a school will have an environmental week. And we make kids aware of the very things we're talking about. And then we'll measure the 7th graders against the 8th graders. And they love competitions. Just to cite one will be food waste. And we'll develop a way to determine how much waste each grade is throwing away. And they'll be very competitive for the week during the test. They're competitive. And then they return back to their old ways. Habits get very ingrained in all of this. And it's difficult to change behavior. So here's the question. Is it good? Is it valuable and necessary? Is it helpful if some externality, like government, state or federal, simply mandates a thing and doesn't allow the society to do a certain behavior? I can see pros and cons. I'm trying to weigh what you're likely going to say. Does that help the response when government disallows a behavior or product, like unleaded gasoline is going from our society, asbestos, cite another. So sometimes governments just do that. Don't let manufacturers make a thing or do a thing. So that even the wealthy among us can't do that thing. Yeah. Because it's gone as an option.
Yeah, I think it does help. I mean, unfortunately, we can't do that with everything, and, but for sure, I mean, it's made a huge impact in a lot of spaces, and that's happening over and over again. I think in some places, it does create more, division too, in a very divided environment. Like if you see, one thing we notice is that whenever, politicians bring up banning gas stoves, or, if you look at some of what California is doing, maybe it's in the approach and the way that they do it, because eventually these things will be phased out, they will be replaced. But I do think we need that. We need some of them, and we're seeing that happen. We're seeing these things transition before our eyes, because car manufacturers are going to be making all electric cars by 2030 pretty much. So I think we definitely need that, but we also need the other things too. And that's why we need to, I don't know if anybody ever has read James Clear's Atomic Habits. It's like one of the best books on habits and how we create habits. And that's why we need to kind of make it easier and make it, so to make it, I mean, it's to be climate forward has been way too difficult for all of us. And you really have to take a lot of initiative to make it happen, but at our school, like we, I was saying, we introduced a composting program at our school up in Jeremy Ranch, lunchtime. So now the kids don't know any different. I mean, they just compost all their food at lunchtime. It's not a pain for them. It's not an issue. It's just how they do things. And when we get to kids young like that, and they know what it is, they come home and they say, why aren't we composting at home? How can we compost at home? I learned at school, like why it's important, and it becomes a piece of the science curriculum, but it also becomes part of just what they do. And so I think, the more that we can just make these things turnkey and make them easier, obviously the bigger impact we'll have.
I'll go ahead and then we'll have a question.
There's a question in the chat, but I'm gonna kind of add to it as well. Being a younger person and being someone who I totally understand the hopelessness that a lot of younger people approach climate change with. That there's, I definitely feel a little bit of cynicism in, I worked at an environmental nonprofit for a little bit, and I definitely encountered how hard it is to move the needle. What gives you hope? You're engaged in this really, a larger conversation. And so I'm sure that you're tapped into a lot of the aspects of the conversation. What in that gives you hope as you're kind of approaching your own relationship to climate change?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And it's something I thought about a lot in terms of taking this role. I think for a long time, I was passionate about this topic, but I didn't want to commit my life to spending time on it, because I thought, gosh, it's going to be really depressing. And, is it even possible to make a change? And so, ultimately I decided, like, I have to do this, because I have to help create a better future for my kids. And I saw what was happening. But being part of the space, I would say that more days than not, I am optimistic rather than, pessimistic. And I think what gives me hope is, don't bet against, the ingenuity of the human brain and the technology. Like, we have all the technology and all the solutions that we need to solve this issue. We just need to, to mobilize to do it. And what's exciting is that things are happening so quickly now. And I think we don't even know, what's going to happen next in terms of the technology. We do need to move very quickly. And I think that's why I think we've underestimated the importance of engaging the public in this topic and having the public help to, motivate, think about what happened in World War II. We needed people to be aware and to be motivated to support what was going to happen. So I think, I'm optimistic that a much broader group of people are engaging in this topic than just one side of the aisle. I think it was optimistic that, we passed government passed the biggest legislation in terms of, the bipartisan act, and then also the bipartisan infrastructure act, and then the IRA. That's like the biggest investment we've made in this. And, during the last election, like, I expected a lot of Republicans to use the IRA against the, and to use that as a reason to run against, and really nobody did. I know they're not fans of it because they don't like the spending around it, but nobody really tried to shoot it down. And instead, you're hearing a lot of conservatives in this country speak up about the need to find climate solutions. So there's a lot of amazing work happening, and there's a lot of great companies that are being created, and there's a lot of economic opportunity for our country and for the world in this transition.
Being an engineer and being surrounded by environmentalists, I understand that nuclear energy is probably one of the best solutions that I can think of as an engineer, but I get really a lot of pushback from if I even bring it up to my wife. She goes, "Yeah, but what about Grenoble? What about it?"
It's been a long time since we've talked about
Okay,
that.
but other people. What is it?
Chernobyl.
It's okay. I know what you mean.
You know what I meant. You said that you're going to tour a plant, and how do you feel about that? Have you seen that on your site? I haven't.
Yeah, we had Benji did tour the plant. It's the Georgia plant that's actually opening up this summer. So it's definitely, we see that all the time. Like we have an investor who's a more of a liberal progressive investor, and came to us and said, like, Howard, why are you calling nuclear energy clean energy? It's not clean energy. But it is. And so like it is a part of the solution. And I think the key is that when we start to vilify, different people and different things, I mean, it has a role to play. And it's worthy of discussion. There are a lot of technologies that are very controversial, from carbon capture to cloud seeding to, nuclear energy. I mean, there's a lot out there. But I think I think there's a lot of things we're afraid of. Why are we afraid of them? Is it a legitimate reason that we're afraid of them? And if you think about, a lot of us don't know or don't internalize, I think, the harm that the oil and gas, pollution has caused us. It truly, it's invisible, so you can't see it. But the statistics are absolutely staggering. So, we've got to have other solutions.
I was involved in the building of a coal-fired power plant in Houston, and 10 people were killed during the construction of it. Okay, and if one person were killed, a nuclear plant would just go crazy. Okay,
Right.
And so there is a non-linear kind of effect because of the fear of nuclear energy. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah.
Hey, Hannah.
Yeah.
I just, I'm gonna kind of speak from the framework of hearing concerns that people maybe more on the left might bring up. So it sounds like this is a company that's going to be built for profit, right? To make money, and that the primary way to make money is to try to find products or different ways, technologies to solve the climate change problem. And I think there's a lot of merit in that, but I think people will also ask, well, isn't there some behavioral things? Isn't there deeper rooted things? And isn't consumerism part of what got us to this climate problem? And is this just encouraging just more consumerism, but maybe with safer products? And then people, particularly conservative people on that side, they're going to go, well, we already distrust the media, and we have these people that were big in these media conglomerates that we don't trust in the first place. See what I'm saying? So I mean, you got kind of both sides of trust issues that I can see from the left and the right when they approach what you're offering. So how would you respond to people on either one of those sides? So again, I've got friends on this side that go, we don't look at any of the mainstream media, CNN, any of those, Fox, CP, CBS, any of those. We don't trust that. They have their own sources. And then the people on the other side, they're going, well, this is a profit-driven company that's basically just trying to sell us more stuff that's supposed to be better for us and better for the environment. So how,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like you would have had to deal with this.
Yeah,
first.
understandable question. I mean, our business model is not based on people buying things. I mean, that's part of, we do think that there is a role to play. We live in a capitalist society. People are
Right.
not going to stop buying things. And so it's
Right.
naive to think they're not, but in every single, article we have, or if you look at our product statement, the first statement is, if you don't need to buy it, don't buy it, buy less. Like that's the first thing.
Right.
So we include that in our language, but we do know that people still buy things, and you have kids, you've got life, you've
Right.
got to buy sneakers, you've got to buy t-shirts, you got to buy things. So, but we have a huge focus on, how do we get people interested in circular economies and thrifting and, reusing all of that. So it's certainly, right now it's a tiny fraction of how we're making money is through that. We have a whole suite, and what we're working on in this quarter is like, we've driven attention to climate topics, which is really like this mass awareness of climate topics. How do we drive action? And those actions can be many different things. They could be composting. They could be buying something, they could be making a donation or getting involved in your community. They could be many things. So that's kind of our goal there, but, understandable. I think, from the media perspective, I mean, we're not the mainstream media, and there's a reason why, I left Disney and why we're not creating this within a mainstream media organization. I felt like, I did try to pursue this within, when I was there. And I had a, big idea to bring together all these different components, but I ultimately felt like I needed to be more disruptive. And be outside the confines of the corporate environment so that we could, really sort of disrupt the space and do something that felt different and really engaging and, fun. And, in mainstream media, a lot of what, is leading the news is the doom and gloom, is, when it bleeds, it leads. And that unfortunately is pretty much true. A lot of that content does really well, but it's not helping us to come together or to find solutions. And so that's why very intentionally, as kind of the, the heartbeat of the content organization, I really focus on how do we change that narrative, and how do we meet people where they are? How do we connect with them, in around kind of topics and places that they're already engaged. And, so that's, but yet leverage, what our superpower in the climate space is that, we come to this with know-how, with 20 plus years, my know-how, and the whole team of how to play in the digital space and how to win, and how to get people's attention, what kinds of topics are going to engage people, how to double down when something's working. We have incredible partnerships and relationships, and we're bringing all those I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not an expert in the climate space. I mean, I may pretend to be, but I spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I'm not. But what I can do is mobilize all of these relationships and all of my learning about storytelling towards this purpose. And I think that, I hope people respect that and appreciate that there are people like us who are getting into the space and, and trying to focus on it. Not to be defensive at all, but like, that's just, how we kind of.
No, that's good. That's what I wanted you to respond to. And on the side of the left, there is a lot of resources out there already.
Yeah.
But for conservatives and people that are having a harder time, I guess, being willing to make behavioral changes or buy different things, and we all do it. I mean, I still do it at times. So, just as guilty. To have something like this seems like fills a great need.
Did you?
I was gonna say, a lot of, what I thought a lot about is you can give people facts about things, but until it emotionally resonates with them, it's not necessarily going to change them. Maybe fewer people smoke in this country, but a lot of people still smoke, and by the fact they know that it's damaging to their health. So I think a lot of it I keep trying to think about maybe the spiritual roots of a lot of this stuff, maybe a more spiritual understanding of life on earth and humanity's connection to that can help a little bit. Some people shy away because it's new age thinking or whatever. I don't like that. But I think for most people, mindless consumerism after a while, politicians keep talking about bread and butter issues and all that. Well, sure, people might think about that, but as they say, it's the emotional thing that kind of moves people, not the facts.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe reaching that emotional core or the spiritual core is probably has to be one of the major thrusts, I think, of anything to get people to change.
I think that's absolutely right. And I mean, yeah, to quote Catherine Hayhoe again, and she has a terrific book called Saving Us. If you haven't read that book, it's wonderful, but she talks Saving Us.
Very nice.
But she talks, you know, I think she's a Christian, and she talks about how, you know, she's doing this because of her faith, you know, and her faith is what grounds her in the whole discussion. I mean, I think that is, I think we would be so much better off if every faith group prioritize this as a piece of the you know, what their stewardship, right, or, you know, responsibility is. And you know, it's funny because years ago they had, you know, evangelicals for the environment, and that was, if you look at, there's actually a lot of leadership in churches on going solar and doing things like that, and, you know, being models to the community. But unfortunately, it hasn't become enough of the, you know, of sort of the responsibility and stewardship of really every religion, as you know, just as citizens of this planet. Like we just take it for granted that we have this incredible, you know, planet and Earth. And I think you're absolutely right, that when we can connect emotionally to how people are feeling, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are not connected with their faith and who are not in that space. And so that's not sort of like a catch-all, which is why we do see a lot of interest in, you know, the money savings aspects or the health savings aspect. But we do see, like, we did a story about this woman last week who did, she plants food in her garden, then gives it to, you know, people in need. And she's based in the UK, and somebody came and poured salt all over her garden and completely ruined her garden. And so she filmed this video, and she was like, you know, I'm devastated because, you know, somebody completely destroyed this work that I've been trying to do. And I, you know, every week she just delivers this food. And that video like went crazy because people resonated with, you know, and connected with her. And then she, you know, had a GoFundMe, and she raised a ton of money, and she, you know, still, like, obviously she was upset that had happened, but she, you know, that was, people connected with that. So I mean, we definitely are always looking for those kind of personal stories as well. And I think, you know, all of us, and particularly a group like this, that is, you know, a faith-grounded, faith-centered group, like, you know, thinking about these things and how we can show up in our churches, right, or our temples, or wherever we worship, and making this a part of the conversation that happens at the church, is absolutely critical. And that's been, you know, that's part of the reason why I wanted to come tonight. That's part of the reason why I did the interview with Deseret News, which is I think where you found me, because I want to read, you know, and I use the language in that interview of, like, you know, clean air, clean water, like these are things we can all agree on. Like we came to this land because this land was a miracle, you know. And so, like, and we know 97% of scientists have said that we are responsible for why this planet has, you know, is in the condition that it's in. So we are responsible for doing what we can to get us out of that. And so that's, you know, I think that's all of our responsibility.
So we have a friend of mine in California, Bob Reese, is on there, and he has started with a gentleman in the UK, a program to try to reach out to faith. Bob, do you want to just briefly talk about that? He's still on there, right?
Yes.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
Lovely to here. I'll put my face on there too, I guess. There we go. Here I am. Just intrigued by.
No, we know.
We all know what it looks like.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just to say, I'm intrigued by the kind of imagination and innovation that you have talked about and present. Jeff or Jay mentioned an organization that I started with one of the leaders in the interfaith work in the environment in the UK and around the world. His name is Martin Palmer. And we have established with a great deal of enthusiasm something called Fast Forward for the Planet. It's based on the idea that will be familiar to you, that if you do a small sacrifice, giving up 2 meals a month and pay an offering or the cost of that into a fund, you can generate an enormous amount of resources to address climate issues. Of course, it's one of the church's most successful programs over 150 years, people fasting and paying a fast offering, which then goes to take care of the poor and the needy. And so I'm really curious as to how your organization might work with faith-based organizations or foundations like ours, how we might work together, because that's, we see, if we can, our idea, or our ideal, I should say, is to convince all of the religions in the world, all of whom believe in fasting and who practice fasting, if they could just give up 2 meals a month, and a number of Latter-day Saints are already doing that, not on the first Sunday, which is reserved for our own fast offering in the church, but on the third Sunday, a group of us, including some of the people in this congregation here or this group tonight, have been doing that since July. We think that if we can have an opportunity to really meet with people, and we had a very successful meeting with the Anglican Bishop of Utah, for example, who saw immediately this connection to Lent. Others see it to Yom Kippur and to Ramadan, but to just get, if enough people make a small sacrifice, an enormous difference. And so I would be very interested in having a conversation with you sometime when you have time, that we might talk about how we can work together.
Yeah, what a wonderful, yeah. Where are you donating that money or that offering?
What are we doing with the money in the offering?
Where are you donating the money?
The money, the idea, we're just starting. So the idea is that we would have a board of people representing all the faiths who would make decisions together. And it's also, we thought that some of the funds would be spent on every continent where there is a need. But I think part of the idea is to let people participate in making decisions about how to use that fund. But if you can collect enough of it, we figured that if only 1% of the population of the world were to do this and pay just $1 a month for a year, it would generate $100 million. So you see the potential of it, and that begins to be money that you can make a big difference with, and you can apply it in different regions of the world, or for different causes, or for different parts of the climate issue.
That's wonderful. I'm in. Yeah, I think that's terrific. I mean, and what it can make an impact, but it's also just such a great symbolic gesture of like, first of all, different faiths coming together, which is what we need on this issue. Is we need different people to come together who normally don't work together to solve this enormous problem. This is the biggest problem we've ever faced. And also, prioritizing it from every faith and every church. I think it's a terrific idea.
And fasting
The
is
other,
Right.
one of the other ideas,
Now it's healthy.
It's,
Yeah.
it's
one
become,
of the other ideas about it, Anna. One
Yeah,
of
I
the
mean,
other,
keep me posted. And I mean, it's definitely something that we could cover as a story, right? If you guys make an announcement that, you've got a partnership and you're going to be doing this, and, this is where the money's going to, whatever. I think it's a great idea. And it seems like something you could also engage the public in, to take an action and say, like, create some website or whatever, or fund, and people, can participate in that. And maybe they get they can share that and say, like, I donated $1 today, and for this group, on Sunday, I reflected. And maybe that's something that every church can say at the end of their service, or when they're talking about service opportunities, where, you can go and work in the community, or you can do this, or you can donate $1 to.
I love the way that you think, and the part of it is that, like with Lent or with fasting in our program, when you're fasting, you're thinking about what you're fasting for. So the idea is that not only do people contribute financially, but they begin to change their habits. They begin to use water more carefully. They begin to think about the decisions they make that impact the world of nature and the world that we live in. So it's an idea, and I'd love to talk with you more about it.
Yeah, reflection. And, Catherine, you should reach out to Catherine Hayhoe, because she would love that idea, because she's always talking about the importance of faith-based community in the climate movement.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. I'll
Yeah.
connect you two offline
Great, thank you.
by email. So, cool.
I was tasked to send a message every once in a while, and I guess this is one of the times. It was about 6 years ago, and it was in Bangladesh. I worked with a lot of the really poor communities, and they've been struck by they call it a cyclone. It's just a hurricane. And they took me out to see the damage that was done, and we went to visit people that are living in these shacks. And when the cyclone comes, it destroys everything for them. And so we work together to help them organize sort of grassroots, starting from nothing, what we can do to help each other and ourselves. At any rate, at the end of seeing all this, and many people had died and so many homes destroyed, and they had a sort of meeting of all the leaders of this area, and they wanted me to come. And I wasn't sure why they wanted me to come or what the point of it was, but it was the conclusion of my tour. And I was up on the podium, and then people stood up and said, "We have one favor of you. We want you to go back to your country and tell them to stop killing us." They were talking about our environmental coughs, kill them with pneumonia, you know, because they're the poorest populations are the ones who are most vulnerable to this. And so mudslides and earthquakes and floods and typhoons.
Extreme heat.
Yeah,
So for clarity, they see American fossil fuel burning is changing their climate. What's the cause and effect?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. This is
That
our
and probably some of the
consumption.
consumerism, the plastics we put into the environment
Right,
that cause problems. And all kinds of
I said,
things.
what? You know, I just kind of slapped on the face, but pretty strong message with, okay. So I don't know what you do with that and how it affects what your message, but it's a truth. It's a reality that,
We all live downstream.
yeah, we all dump it down the street and they catch it.
Right, it's absolutely true. And yeah, I mean, the number of people who, you know, pollute the population is so different than the people who are actually being affected, even worse than, you know, the ones who are actually polluting, so.
We've spent a little bit of time in India, and the skies are, you can't see the stars, you know,
Right,
and
Because
because of air pollution, because they're making products for the Western world unregulated, okay,
right,
period.
right, India, China, India, China, and the US are the biggest polluters. Yeah,
So you're kind of helping that by vetting companies that, kind of like the example you gave. What, American made, what was it?
yeah, the laundry detergent.
Yeah, laundry
Yeah, we
detergent.
are, I mean, and we.
So I mean, it's such a vast problem.
Right.
And, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
that's a
we're
good
kind of
example of
focused-
trying to address that. You're keeping it here by making it here. And you're taking care of the plastic by putting the metal can. And then I'm assuming you're verifying the source of the materials in it, that's, you
Yeah.
know, phosphates and all that, so. I mean, that's.
Yeah,
that's cool.
we're
That's a way to-
starting here because we couldn't start globally.
Right.
I mean, we do feature a lot of innovation stories about, you know, like some of these incredible groups that are cleaning up the plastic and using technology and innovation to go and clean up some of these poor areas where the plastic is collecting. You know, Ocean Cleanup is an organization that's absolutely unbelievable and has these kind of massive, you know, things that they've, you know, sort of sucking everything into. So we do that. But, you know, I think another piece is like, we've got to, you know, if we spur innovation in this country and we start to innovate and grow and show that we can create energy in cheaper ways that is healthier, it's going to create competition with other countries like China. I mean, China's moving very quickly into renewables and trying to, you know, reduce consumption. So that's the other piece that kind of like falls into place. But unfortunately, you know, there's just so many stories to be told, and there's a lot of sad stories.
I was trying to do some building a few years ago, and I really tried hard to find out if this lumber was sustainably, you know, sourced, okay? And I called and I got on the internet, and, you know, I just couldn't find it out.
Yeah.
If you guys could provide like a consumer report sort of thing for a broad range of products.
Right.
That would be awesome,
Yeah.
maybe there is something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying to do a little bit of, the wire cutter consumer reports for some of these things. I mean, there probably weren't a lot of great solutions when you were looking, and I think part of it is like, we need to make these things easier, right? We need to just, we need to make sure that these companies are motivated to buy sustainable wood. And, I just met with another startup last week that is doing exactly that. They
Wow.
take sustainable wood and they sell it to Room and Board and West Elm and all of that stuff, and that's their business model. So, there are a lot of great people out there. The problem is those people are just not, those companies are not reaching us, and that's where we come in.
Nice.
Can we help to get the word out? And,
Good.
so,
But what I hear is what, if we keep focusing on what we're doing here, particularly as consumers, because it's not gonna go away, and we are big consumers in America, some of the best. That if we do that better and cleaner, that will help the people downstream.
There's another.
That story that you told, which is painful to hear.
Yeah.
That will, if we take care of what we're doing, what we're producing, what we're using a lot better, that will help everybody downstream from us. I mean, by
right. And
having
even-
sustainable-
Either that or they have to all migrate up here. But that is actually another issue. It's many people are fleeing climate because their countries are becoming unsustainable. Extreme heat, famine, drought, et cetera, all the natural disasters. People are leaving, and eventually it's gonna get to the point where countries will not be able to put up walls anymore to stop it. And maybe we should take the walls down.
Yeah,
it's
well,
all a
that's gonna
discussion.
be a whole other.
There's an incentive,
I
right?
think, also, that's gonna be the issue we face if we don't fix our problem here in this city. So we need to do what we can to make a difference here,
Yeah.
because people don't
Exactly.
realize the economic impact of the Great Salt Lake collapsing. It's gonna be unlivable. So we have to kind of come together to make changes, and we are. I mean, there's great progress being made.
Did you talk about the Great Salt Lake earlier?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay. What becomes unlivable if it dries up? The whole county, the whole Wasatch?
Yeah, eventually,
Because
I
of
mean, if
the
they just
water.
let it go and there was no, and we didn't do anything to change the way water is getting into the Great Salt Lake. Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be arsenic in the air. It's really not, it's not gonna be safe and healthy. And there's examples of this that have already played
Yeah,
out.
California.
Okay, so if the Great Salt Lake dries up, more than just the northwest quadrants of Salt Lake County is.
Yeah, and it will
The
affect,
whole county, the
Right.
tri-county, the
Yeah.
5-county area.
Well, you've got a whole country of millions of migratory birds,
right,
and we got
Okay.
brine shrimp, and we got industries that rely on. I mean,
Okay,
there's a
that's
lot
on, that's on me for
all
not having heard
kinds of
that.
Right.
It's Provo too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
Provo.
the windblown dust will get all the way to Provo.
I mean,
Okay.
Well, it's just like.
Whether it's-
So the whole
wildfires,
metropolitan statistical area gets affected.
we have,
Out to the
look
Provo.
at all the times we've had major wildfires on the west coast that have migrated out
Come
here.
over here,
to
right.
us.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard it for weeks, some months even.
and we
Okay.
have like the inversion and whatnot. I mean, that's all, a lot of that's air pollution, so.
Oh, go ahead.
the dozen people in this room appear to be convinced of the topics that we're discussing. But there needs to be some driver that persuades the common citizen. So I'm trying to think of, people act on their own self-interest. We all do. I mean, nothing will be more convenient than the personal automobile, me driving alone. I get to add trips or take trips away. I get to change my mind and go over there and sit over there. Bus, taxi, Uber, train, all these other methods, well, economical, are slow and they take our time up. So nothing will beat the personal automobile if convenience is what's driving my decision. So I have to begin to weigh these other factors, okay? And while us in the room may weigh heavily on the environmental conservation, most citizens are going to be weighing on their time and their dollar, okay? So I'm thinking about what are ways to persuade people financially, okay? Or to be driven by the motives that drive people through product marketing persuades people. And people are make decisions based on convenience. I mean, fast food, overpackaged foods. I mean, the list goes on. These things. You go to the grocery store and these frozen entrees have these beautiful color photographs on the outside of a box of food inside that's of marginal nutrition. And yet people buy those things. I buy those things sometimes when I want convenience. So how do we persuade people to do what is in their long-term best interest? Buy from the produce section, not from the frozen food section. I'm generalizing, but to make decisions that affect long-term. And I'm thinking of motives like the Olympics. Every 2 years, 4 years, we get together as a world and have an Olympics. We're driven by this, our national pride to do well and to drive to perfection. So I'm sharing a stream of consciousness right now. I hope you can.
We
do
can
that. Okay. But we need something
So
like
she
an
did
Olympics.
cover this.
We need something like an Olympics.
Once you came in late,
Okay.
she did cover, this is what the whole,
That's
this is
okay.
what,
Okay.
this whole thing is trying.
We need something like an Olympics that drives
This is what her
countries to
website's-
want to improve.
That's what she's doing.
This is what she's doing, this is what their
Okay.
website's all about.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what
It's
we're,
about that.
tracking everything based on like the value proposition, like how do we, what works best, and we know what works best is it saves me money, it makes them healthier. So we deliver information in that way to kind of trick people really into kind of getting into it. And I think there are things that governments, that local governments, I mean, it's free to go on public transit here because people want, the government wants more people to take public transit.
Here, freedom.
Yeah, in Salt Lake, there's downtown, there's free
Okay,
public transit,
Yeah.
which they did in
In
part to
the
reduce
business
pollution.
district.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young people who are not driving cars. I mean, I don't know about any of you, but there's a lot of kids who don't even want their license and they don't want to drive. And, up
Okay.
in Park City, we have an incredible micro transit program, that where you can just call them up and say, I need to get somewhere. And it's either they tell you how to get there on the bus. They made it so easy.
Okay.
So we need to make it easier for people to make these choices as we've been talking about. And that's
Yes.
part of like our role is really to convince people that, these choices, but it doesn't require sacrifice to be climate friendly, because if it requires sacrifice, I mean, we all know like there is some sacrifice, but really there's a lot of savings out there to be had for this stuff. Like we're trying to, kind of promote like the FOMO of it. Like, let's be a part of this,
Yeah.
let's create,
FOMO.
So, that's kind of our whole ethos. So,
One of the things as we. Yeah, at a time that you talked about walls, and one of the things that I think is helpful about what you're doing is you're trying to take down some political walls by reaching out to conservatives and having dialogue with them and getting them excited about some of these things by the language you use and the language you're not using. And by recognizing we are living in this capitalist, environment, and to try to make things as accessible for those kind of people. So really appreciate that. One of the biggest things we could do is work together politically, ideologically together better. And we may not agree on a number of things, but if we can agree on some of the things and work on those, that's better than just knocking heads all the time and not getting anything done.
right, yeah,
So I can see what you're doing also helping with that.
yeah,
So thank you.
yeah.
Just wanted
Yeah.
to point out. Do your voice.
We're out of time now. It's
Yeah,
not.
I'm just gonna say real quick, guys. I think one other thing people have to think about is we have had this ongoing feeling that we can grow our way out of any problem. And I think that paradigm needs to shift.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that
Sure.
you would like to share or say that you haven't had a chance to, or how would you like to wrap it up?
No, I mean, I just want to thank you all for welcoming me into this conversation and into your home. And hopefully you learned a little bit about what we're doing and you feel motivated to take that into your own life and wherever wherever your path takes you to just, think about what we're trying to do, and that this is the biggest problem that we face and affects, so many aspects of our lives and our society. So if I can be helpful, let me know, check out what we're doing, always appreciate the feedback, and just thank you for spending the evening with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Thank you so much. And so you can get the websites on the Think Again, Faith Again. The again dash faith again. .life. There's also a video with Catherine Hayhoe that was mentioned, but again, you can access Cool Down website, Emma's website. Our my website. And so I encourage you to do that. And let's just keep trying to do our best. You know, if we're willing to make even little changes, that'll help us get making bigger changes. Appreciate everyone that attended tonight. Thank you very much. And thanks again to Ed and Kristen and Madison. Thank you. And all of you for being willing to share your time and thoughts and energy here. All right, thanks.
Thank
you.
How often do you all meet?
Once a month.
Random, yeah, both times a year. Is that about right, guys?
Yeah, and we have a faith again, which is more religious based, you know.